Ronnie Dale, fourwheelinginwesternaustralia.com. Welcome to another video about fuel consumption. This one in specific is all about how to save fuel, some nice handy tips there. I've done a top list on mods that actually hammer your fuel consumption. So basically the ugly truth of four-wheeling and fuel consumption. By the way, I said second video, so there is a video before this, and that is how to calculate how much fuel your vehicle uses, and some hidden tips and hints there, some stuff that people may not have thought about. So it's not all as simple as a calculation. There are factors in there which I mentioned in this other video. Up in one of these corners here is a link, and at the end of this video you can cycle back to that one. So let's get stuck into ways of saving fuel for your vehicle. Let's just give you one now. Buy a diesel. All right, so I guess the first thing we'll look at may seem obvious to some people, but let's go to engine maintenance, the top areas that will save you fuel. Fuel savings and maintenance. So general service on your vehicle is going to obviously help you save on your fuel because your vehicle is running at its optimum performance. Number one, the air filter. Make sure you clean that out or change the air filter. Maybe bring an air filter out if you're on a dusty trip, because then you can change it out and maybe try and clean the other one. Oil. Oil is a big thing. Make sure you change your oils regularly. And then we have an oil catch can. So for diesel vehicles, some diesel vehicles, an oil catch can is actually, it's going to actually save you fuel costs in the long run. Welcome back. There's something that I left out of that segment, and I'm going to mention it here. So I am prepared to cop some criticism for this comment I'm going to make here, but hey, I'm going to make it very vague. So do engine modifications like chip tuning, does that improve your fuel economy? Yes, and big no. Okay, so here's my reason for yes, and then I'm going to argue my yes to the point of no, and then you'll see where I'm coming from, if that makes any sense at all. If you get it tuned properly, say you tune your vehicle to tow your vehicle, okay? You tune it to do a certain application. If the fuel and air mixture comes in at the right RPM and the drivability is all there, yes, you can in fact save fuel on your vehicle with chip tuning if it's done properly and it is tuned to drive, not tuned for numbers, not tuned to just soot out the back and just go 100 miles per hour. Here's my argument against it. Most people that do get a chip tune, like myself, we do like to use the power a bit. So from a start-stop point of view, or from a stop-start I should say, you are going to use more fuel. You're going to rev it more. You're going to, you are basically going to be using more fuel. But if you drive it very carefully for a specific trip, you're towing something, yes, an engine modification like a chip tune can actually save you a bit of fuel. But this is the rare occasion, let's be honest. Now to the ugly truth of vehicle modifications and fuel usage. Let's start with my number one. The number one thing that's going to wreck your fuel economy and your fuel usage and make you burn more fuel is the rooftop tent. If your rooftop tent is on top of the roof, like most people do, especially those big bulky ones, I'm not talking about the slimline ones, they're probably not too bad, but they're still gonna, make you suffer in your fuel economy. The big bulky rooftop tents, and let's just include an overloaded roof with heaps of swags and stuff, that is going to kill your fuel economy more than anything else on the vehicle, in my opinion. So I'm sorry, RTT people, that's why I don't have an RTT. Now there is a clever way though to mount an RTT. Let's take my canopy for instance. My canopy is lower so I can put a bag on top. So let's delete the frame on top. We countersink, or we sink the rooftop tent at the lower point. That way it's not interfering with any wind because it's lower than the roof, right? That is the best way to put it on there, and that makes the rooftop tent not so bad. Since we're already on the roof, why not discuss the roof rack? The roof rack. You put a roof rack on any vehicle, you can pretty much kiss goodbye 1 to 2 litres of diesel or petrol per 100 kilometres. Pretty much straight off the bat. You can almost guarantee that. The next one, you know it, big tyres. Big tyres, like 35-inch tyres. The rolling resistance you are creating for your vehicle, and it's not just that, it's also the fact that you may not be geared right to use those tyres. Now, in my case, or everyone's case who owns a 70 series Land Cruiser, we are the lucky bunch that gets the vehicle. You can put 35s on, and it is pretty much, I'd almost say, perfectly geared for it. Most other vehicles that I've put big tyres on, I've had to go down in size or re-gear the differential. So even with re-gearing the differential, yes, it will help your fuel improvement a little bit on takeoff, but your rolling resistance is still there. So bigger tyres equal more usage of fuel. So we're calling upon Captain Obvious for the last two things I'm going to discuss. So actually there's another one in there, there's a bit of a curveball you may not realise. Okay, with heavy bar work, all the bar work I have in my vehicle is definitely putting a dent into my fuel economy somewhat. Maybe not as much as what you may think. It is putting a little dent in it because it is weight. Bar work weighs a lot. The other main thing, if you have a tray back on your vehicle, see in Australia, our trays kind of protrude the sides, okay? This is just how we sort of have our utility vehicles here. Now it does make it really versatile, but the problem is if you put a big canopy on it, you're creating another big piece of wind blockage, wind resistance. When I put the big canopy on this Land Cruiser, the big one I had before, my fuel consumption jumped up like 1 litre or 2 litres per 100 straight away. Jumped up at highway speeds. That's the other thing. It's at highway speeds all these things matter. At speeds lower than 80, it doesn't really make a difference, to be honest. It's when you get up in speed, that's where all this wind resistance comes into play. I mean, in other words, you are messing with the aerodynamics that your vehicle manufacturer has spent hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars on to get it as aerodynamic as possible. Now to the surprising one, the mirrors. If you put big mirrors on your vehicle, like those massive clear view mirrors, they are going to add wind resistance. Wherever you believe it or not, it is going to add wind resistance. The mirrors actually make a difference. So all this doom and gloom about all these modifications to a vehicle, I'm suffering a lot of them here actually. Look, fuel and overlanding, four-wheel driving, all the gear we put in our vehicles, there are ways you can change your driving habits, but it's in terms of all the stuff we put in our vehicles, make sure you actually need it. If you don't need it, don't put it on if you're concerned about fuel. If you're not too concerned about fuel and you want to increase your range, put more fuel tanks on, but just don't overload your vehicle. You don't want to go over your GVM because then all of a sudden your vehicle is not actually technically insured or technically legal and technically safe. So consider those three major factors should something go wrong. So my advice to you is maybe just change your driving habits to conserve a bit of fuel, but for everyone who's still modifying their vehicle, only put the mods on the vehicle as you need them and when you know you need them. Okay, don't just start whacking bar work. Like all this bar work I have in this vehicle, if I drive to the beach and back and that's all I do, it's overkill. I've wasted money and it's an ongoing waste of money. It's extra weight, it's extra wind resistance that my vehicle has to push through. So those are the things you need to consider when it comes to fuel consumption. Driving habits. All right, so here's one of those that some people are going to disagree with me on, but I'm talking from my experience. So from what I have experienced with four-wheel drive and two-wheel drive, when I hit gravel, I automatically put it in four-wheel drive. Your four-wheel drive system is a safety system on your vehicle. So keep this in mind because I'm going to bring this up again. So some people are hell-bent on two-wheel drive burns less fuel than four-wheel drive. To a certain degree, yes, of course it does, but it is so minimal. I've done a trip with 302 litres filled to the brim. I drove 1,700 kilometres. 1,700 kilometres, okay? And most of that was on gravel. A lot of it. Yeah, most of it. Most of it was on gravel in four-wheel drive. When I hit bitumen, I'll put it in two-wheel drive. As soon as I hit gravel, four-wheel drive. No questions asked. It doesn't burn that much difference in fuel to make it justifiable to make your journey, your passengers and yourself and your vehicle less safe. Because four-wheel drive system in these vehicles, they weren't developed for us to go four-wheeling. They were developed to maintain traction on gravel roads, basically. That's what it all comes down to. So your four-wheel drive system is a safety system in your vehicle. So when you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you want to save a little bit of fuel to put it in two-wheel drive, I'll say don't do it. Leave it in four-wheel drive. Keep the safety aspect of your vehicle and your traction. You'll maintain the road as well, and you're going to arrive to point B a lot safer, and you're not using that much more fuel. Take this into consideration. If I sit at 90 kilometers per hour and I'm towing a trailer, say I'm towing 1.5 tons on the back, I go 500 Ks. Say if I didn't tow and I was going 110 kilometers per hour, so 20 kilometers more per hour, because we're talking at there's a lot of wind coming in at those speeds, I will actually get better fuel towing at 90 kilometers per hour than I would driving and not towing anything going 110. So driving under 90 kilometers per hour on the highways, anywhere, in any situation, you are going to get less wind resistance, you're going to get better fuel. And that is why the grey armies, the grey nomads, the guys towing the caravans down the highways, that's why a lot of those guys sit on 90 kilometers per hour. Makes sense, right? But it is pretty frustrating. So calling in Captain Obvious again, coasting down a hill is going to save you fuel rather than just staying on that accelerator the whole way. Powering up a hill is going to drink a lot of fuel. So yeah, I know it's pretty obvious. Water is wet, fire is hot. But just take that into consideration as you're driving, because as you're coasting down that hill, maybe you don't need to power too much into the next hill. Just sort of take it easy up the hill if you're trying to conserve fuel. Within reason. You're not going to want to stop traffic. Tyre pressures and tyres. An all-terrain tyre, less aggressive pattern, is going to give you less rolling resistance than a big chunky mud tyre. I think we all know that. But one thing people don't consider is the tyre pressure. If you are running underinflated on the highway, you are causing more rolling resistance, you are burning more fuel. But it also goes the other way around. If you've got too much air in the tyres and you're on the beach, well, you're slugging it through the sand because your footprint's not big enough and you are using more fuel. So tyre pressures, think about them in all situations of driving. A lot of people don't want to lower the tyres because they're lazy. They're not only cutting up the tracks, soft sand tracks, but they are also using a shitload more fuel. Tailgating and slipstreaming, yes, it does save you fuel, but don't do it. It's just too dangerous. And if you're one of those blokes that sits behind, a big road train just for that reason, you're going to cop a rock in the windscreen one day. Cruise control. I don't like cruise control. Why don't I like cruise control? Because cruise control maintains the speed at all costs. So if you're going down a hill, it'll start braking for you. If you're going up a hill, it'll accelerate and it'll just maintain that acceleration. You don't have control on how much fuel you're using with cruise control. And that is why I don't even bother having cruise control. Using the right gears. For example, when you're towing, if you're in a too high a gear and you need to come back down a gear, a lot of people just hold the gear. Gearing does use fuel as well. You may think that you're at a lower rev, you're going up a hill, you're using less fuel than if you drop down a gear and you're in a higher rev, but it's not true. Sometimes you're actually trying to put more fuel in, you're labouring the engine, you're trying to put more fuel in it to keep the revs up. Sometimes you're better off gearing down and then just getting through that section. Heavy loads as well. If you have heavy loads, don't just try and take off like a race car. You're driving a big, fat, full drive. Petrol or diesel, doesn't matter. Just take off nice and easy. You're going to save all your running gear as well. One other thing I like to discuss, and that is choosing the right vehicle for the right application. So you may go out, or you may be vehicle shopping. If you're going to be towing stuff, you know, like big caravans and things like that, you don't want to go get a Suzuki Jimny or a small car. You want to get a bigger vehicle. Say for example, a V8 Land Cruiser, 200 series, you know. A vehicle with a bigger motor if you're going to tow stuff, and preferably diesel. And if you're not going to tow stuff and you don't need a big vehicle, then go a small vehicle. Less rim resistance, less weight equals less fuel usage. Also, modern engines versus old engines, there's a big fuel difference there as well. But the main thing, the main fundamental thing that's going to chew fuel for you is that 90 kilometer per hour versus 100 kilometer per hour. You'll be surprised how much difference there is in fuel usage just doing that extra 10 kilometers per hour. Even worse when you go to 110. And beyond that, it just gets worse. Well, I hope I haven't just given you bad news. I hope you do find some of these tips useful, and it does save you money in the long run. And for those who are still building a vehicle, take these into consideration because they will hurt your pocket. If you want a video on how to calculate your fuel usage, there's one down there. There's another video coming up with some more fuel tips, when to fill up at a Bowser, when not to fill up, you know, just all the stuff that you may not think about, all the stuff that we've sort of learnt the hard way and a few other things like that. So that's coming up. And of course, how about petrol versus diesel? I've got to do that one, right? Support creation of content up there, subscribe here, and I'll see you next time. Woo!